This video's not supposed to exist. As about 40 or so of my viewers probably know, I'm trying my hand at playing games. I'm supposed to be picking a new game to play, and I'm kind of back and forth between Dissidia Duodecim and Mega Man Legends. While I want to get one of these started, there's a fan project that's been going on for a few years now, attempting to translate a PSP game known as Final Fantasy Type 0. If I haven't quite hit this nail hard enough yet, I'm kind of a Final Fantasy fan. In fact, I'd eventually like to play the Final Fantasy games for you guys, seeing as how there's a lot of them I actually haven't beaten yet. But that's besides the point. We're talking about Final Fantasy 0 right now and what's going on with it. For those who don't know, this probably would have been one of the best PSP, nay, one of the best handheld games ever released. And while Japanese gamers enjoyed the crap out of it, us American gamers weren't quite as lucky. There's a lot I could talk about, and you'll probably hear it eventually. But the main thing you need to know is the fan translation of this game is almost done. Now I will for sure be doing a playthrough of this game when the fan translation is completed. This makes me a little hesitant to start another Let's Play. I don't want to be right in the middle of another game and then find out that this game has been completed and cut that game in half to start this, because I am doing this as soon as it's available. So here we are with another Weiss Trial Deck review. I've decided to cover the Wooser set, seeing as how it's the first special set that the game of Weiss has seen. For those who don't know, Wooser is kind of like a 3 to 5 minute anime short that they show in Japan. It's a small little comedy sketch thing, and it's actually pretty entertaining. When you buy the special set, you get a mini mascot, a deck box, deck sleeves, the deck, of course, and 5 promo cards. It's a little bit expensive, as you can imagine, but it's still a pretty cool set. So now that we've got the talking out of the way, let's take a look at the deck. For those who just need a copy of the deck list, here it is. Just leave me a like on the way out if you'd be so kind. For the rest of you, you might notice that this deck is actually strangely well balanced for a trial deck. Normally, trial decks run like 40 level 0s and then just a couple level 1s, and that's what they call a trial deck. Let's dig a little deeper. The 0 lineup is a little light for my tastes, but hey, a deck of 14 zeros definitely isn't unheard of. This is normally the part where I talk about the level 0 vanillas, but the Wooser set doesn't run any level 0 vanillas. Huh. It might be because this set is only one color, and vanillas are normally used to fix colors. It could also just be that because this is a special set, they knew they wouldn't have a lot of cards to work with, so they just made every card as interesting as possible. We begin our lineup with, appropriately, Wooser Begins. It's kind of funny how perfectly named this card is, because if you can get this as your first turn 1 play, then it's amazing. It's your typical first turn play card if you have no other characters, and this is a level 1 3500. This can really matter because it can screw with suiciders and also side attacking. 3500 isn't bad either. Also, since the deck is so light on level 0s, there are going to be a few situations in which you only have this card in your hand. All in all, it's not an awful choice. The main level 0 beater, though, is actually going to be Wooser One Click of Doom. Hey, look, the trial deck comes with a 4000 beater at level 0. That's pretty unique, right? I don't think we've seen that since the, what was that one trial deck? Oh. Uh-oh. Ugh, I'm thinking too hard on it. Anyways, you might know that I really like 4000 beaters at level 0. They deal with pretty much anything except for suiciders. Oddly, though, I don't know if I'm quite okay with this one. Its mandatory take 1 damage effect is a little too not versatile. I understand effects like this for some decks because you want to get to level 1 or level 2 really quickly, but this deck doesn't really have a shiny level. There's really no reason to rush to level 1 like that. Also, what happens when you draw this at level 3 and you're trying to finish the game? That 1 damage could end up costing you, and you can't suicide rush it into anything. Not necessarily a bad card, but a little bit controversial. The deck comes with 2 copies of the level 0 assist, and I don't know if I'm really okay with this. Getting both of them in one match is going to be a nightmare. And even if you do, it's only an extra 500 boost. But anyways, this card also has a secondary effect. You can pay 2 and rest this card at the end of your Encore step, and you get to draw a card. I could see a few uses for this. The main and probably best is, it happens after you do your attacks, right? Well, if you attacked into any of your climaxes and you didn't want to encore anybody, then you could use this effect to get the climaxes out of your stock. And the +1 hand advantage is definitely a nice little bonus. My only real gripe with this card is the fact that you only get 2 of them. When Wooser, Otawa, or Murray attacks, you can give one of your other characters a 1500 power boost. Early game, this is actually a really good effect, and I really like it a lot. This also combos really well with the card I'm about to talk about. When your other mystery characters attack, and by the way that's going to be all of your characters, Teaching of 3 Arrows gets an extra 1000 boost. You may also notice that this card is a natural 3000, the same as Vanilla's but with a boost effect. Admittedly, that's pretty hot. So if you attack with 2 other characters, this card actually gets up to 5000 on turn 0. Perfect for assassinating anything. It does have the little downside that if you reveal the top card of your deck and it's not a mystery character, this card loses 2000 power. Even then, it's still pretty strong, and since all of your characters are mystery characters, this effect only really triggers if you happen to hit your event or climax. So about that combo, if you attack with Otawa or Murray first, you can give the 1500 boost to this character. Attacking with just one and then attacking with this character makes it a 5500. If you attack with that character and then another character and then this character, it's a 6500. Even better if you can attack with both of them, then this card gets a 3000 boost on top of its 2000 boost to become an 8000 for level 0. If you're just ridiculously lucky and you have both of the assists in the back row, then this is actually a 9000 level 0 when it attacks. Whew, dem some big numbers. You'll probably never pull that off, but isn't it kind of funny that you can? Our level 1 has a little bit of beatdown pressure. It's definitely not the strongest ever, but we've got a few tricks up our sleeves that we're going to look at. Wooser on April 2nd is our main beater. This is probably the closest thing that this deck has to a vanilla. It costs 1 stock, it's a natural 6500, and it does have a form of Encore. The form of Encore, however, is the putting the top card of your library into your clock. Not 100% sure I like that. Normally I think that effect is great, but in this case, the deck has so many cards that make you lose really quickly. It's not awful, and I do see its uses, but another huge problem I have is if your opponent pays 1 for a 7000 vanilla, you're in trouble. It steps over this, and in order to encore your character back, you have to take 1 damage. Even if you do encore, your opponent's just going to attack over this again. It's not like they really have to work for that extra 500. Just a little reminder on why 7000 level 1 vanillas are awesome. Wooser Thoroughly Burnt White is a tech card. Not very strong, but after it's reversed, you can reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's a climax card, then you can put this card into the stock. Becoming stock after you die is actually a pretty okay effect. You can also kind of combo this with the other card that lets you look at the top card of your deck. This is an okay card, but I don't know if I'd really be relying on it. Even later in the game, as late as level 3, you're never going to be able to guarantee the top card of your deck is a climax card. Our level 1 assist is sort of a stock accelerator. It only gives a 500 boost, which is really painful. But every turn, if you don't have a marker under this card, you can tap it to put 1 marker under it, and if it does have a marker, you can tap it to put that marker directly into your stock. Admittedly, this effect is a little bit terrifying because you never get to look at the card. If it's a climax, then it's just going to go straight to your stock and you're never going to know about it. Also, this deck isn't very stock reliant, so I don't really know what you would spend the extra stock on unless maybe you had this and the level 0 assist and you were just using it to draw the extra cards. A neat idea, but probably not the most effective use. Lastly, we have Wooser on Icy Island, which is our climax combo. When it attacks, if you have its climax in play, you can look at the top card of your deck and reveal it, and if it's a mystery character, which again is all of our characters, then it goes directly to your hand. This is actually pretty cool, especially if you can use this to attack an open spot or something. It's not exactly hand advantage because you're playing a climax in order to get 1 extra hand, you're paying 1 to get 1, but it's still a pretty neat effect. We lose a lot of our momentum at level 2, but it doesn't make us pushovers. We get a whopping 4 copies of the level 2 counter. The 3000 backup cards kinda make sense here a little bit because you're probably going to be playing with a lot of level 1s. 4 might be pushing it a little bit, but it's not like we're going to be able to rely on our assists. Wooser Summon Hero is our main level 2 beater. And this card is awful. It does only cost 1 and it does have 9000 power, which is technically really good. But its summoning condition is that you have to have at least 4 characters in play. That is terrible. That is really, really awful. Especially because you're starting to hit that point in the game where you want to just swarm characters as quickly as possible. And if you don't have 4 characters in play already, well, nothing you can do about it. The fact that this is the level 2 beater we got 4 copies of is almost like a really bad joke, but it's really not that funny at all. Principal King of Darkness is actually a stupidly good card. It gives all of your mystery characters a 1000 boost, meaning if you can get 2 of these guys in play, fun times are about to be had. It's also a changer, which is pretty rare nowadays to find in trial decks. Put it in the back row, let it power up your characters, and if you feel you need to, you can change it into a pretty nice beater. One other quick note, the level 3 it turns into does heal. So yeah, that's pretty cool. This deck actually comes with 2 different level 3s. That isn't really something I see very often, so let's take a look at them. Wooser Want to Destroy the World is the most controversial card in the entire set. Its effect is super wordy and long, so I'll give you the short version. When it comes into play, every character that isn't itself is sent to the waiting room. That's both you and your opponent. The interesting thing about this effect is, I don't know how many people know this, but you can actually encore off of card effects and mechanics. That's pretty neat, huh? Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a full field of 5 characters and you want to get rid of one to play a new one. Because of the way Encore works, you can actually discard a character, play the new one, and then encore the old one back into play, discarding the new one. The uses for this are few and far between, but the reason I bring it up now is because all of the characters that are sent to the waiting room until there is a ruling proving that this is not possible can be encored back onto stage. Meaning your opponent could technically pay a whole bunch of resources to encore their field back. Alternatively, you can pay to encore your characters back onto the field too so that you make sure you have some attackers. Like I said before, there could be a ruling that pops up that gets rid of this, maybe because it's during the attack phase and not the main phase, but until further notice, that's how I'm going to interpret it. Moving right along, it also gets an extra plus 12,000 power boost. No, you didn't just hear me wrong. This card is a 22,000. This on its own is terrifying, but there's one final thing about this card that makes it incredibly awesome. If your opponent happens to cancel your damage, then you deal damage to them equal to this character's soul. It's kind of like triggering a burn trigger, but way more broken. Overall, careful use of this card will be what decides whether you win or lose, and if you use it correctly, people are going to hate you. His Royal Highness Wooser is the last of our level 3s. This is also the change target for the level 2. When it comes into play, it heals, which is pretty awesome. Its other effect, though, is a little scarily dumb. If this card side attacks, you can give one of your other characters plus 3,000 power. A couple of things with that. First of all, why would you be side attacking at level 3? Some of you are probably going to say, oh, but what if you pull off the change and you get this card on level 2? This card is a 10,000, so if you have it on level 2, you're probably going to be able to step over anything anyway. Even if you can't, I can't think of very many times when you would side attack with this card. Even if you do side attack and you give another character plus 3,000 power, who are you going to give it to that it's actually going to matter? This is probably going to be the strongest card you have on the field. I don't know. There's probably a use for this card somewhere, but I definitely can't think of it. I think its second effect is absolutely hilariously dumb. This deck comes with one event in 2 copies, called Respect of 3 Girls. Alright, let's go through this one step at a time. Look at up to 4 cards from the top of your library, choose one mystery character, reveal it, and put it in your hand. Well, okay, that kinda sucks. Most of the time when you get a searcher card, you can actually just look through your entire library. But alright. Put the rest of the cards in the waiting room. Well, gee, that kinda sucks too. If any of those were climaxes, I'm down some damage stoppers. Choose one of your characters. That character gets plus 2,000 power and plus 1 soul for the turn. Well, that's kind of a neat little bonus effect. Maybe this card isn't so bad after all. Put this card in the clock. Ooh, yeah. About that whole taking 1 damage to get a character and a small boost thing. What is it with you cards and dealing self-damage? It's not like your opponent needs help in beating you. I couldn't blame you for liking this card, but in my personal opinion, I don't think it's worth taking the damage to yourself, especially since that makes this card pretty worthless during late level 2 and early level 3. This is our climax lineup. It comes with 2 copies of a bounce trigger, which I think is really cool. And unfortunately, only 2 copies of the climax combo card. Slightly disappointing, but then again, it is just a trial deck. So here we are. What are my thoughts on Wooser? I think this is a rather interesting idea for a set. The cards are incredibly gorgeous. I wish I knew enough Japanese to know what all of the cards say. It's also really neat the way they moved the text boxes around to make sure that you got all of the artwork. It's a little bit daunting that the deck was only 1 color, but then again, I guess that makes it a little more thematical. So yeah, idea and theme-wise, I think this deck is rather fantastic. But then we move on to the competition side of things. This is a trading card game after all, and if you want to be using this in a trading card game, then we have to know how it handles. Personally, I don't think this deck is very good. I'm sorry, you can burn me at the stake, put me in jail, whatever you need to do, but I don't think this deck is a very competitive deck. No, no, stop. I can already see you reaching for your keyboard to type in something like, "Oh, but Kudou, you don't understand. I went 28-0 with this deck at locals. It's obviously one of the greatest decks ever made." I don't deny that this deck can win some matches, and I also don't deny that there are probably going to be some people who get really good with it. I still personally stand by the thought that this deck is not very competitively good. With the amazing slew of trial decks we have available to us, especially in the Japanese metagame, I don't see why you would pick up this trial deck over another one unless you want to be a part of the special set. You know, get the limited edition deck box and the deck sleeves and the little standy guy that can stand with you during your matches. All that's well and fine, but the deck still kinda sucks. I'm sorry. This is normally the portion where I go through and I tell you, well, I don't think this deck is very competitive, but if you want to make it a little more competitive, here are some changes you can make to the deck. But you know what? I'm not going to do that this time. I believe that this set of cards is a collectible. If you truly are looking for a way to make this a competitive deck, then I think you can figure out how to make those changes on your own without me patronizing you. For any of you that are super disappointed that I'm not going to give you a deck analysis, trust me, the changes are really easy to see. It's just that I believe even if you make the changes that I can think of, the deck still won't run up to par. Overall, try and make sure you get one of these sets for your collection. The sets are going to get really rare, but I'll have a link in the description on where you can find one for a pretty reasonable price. I think it's about $60. Anyone who's already looked at the Wooser set knows that there's a set of kind of funny joke cards that come with it as promo cards. As a special treat, we're going to take a quick look at the 6 promos that you can get with this set. Keep in mind, none of the cards I'm about to show you are legal for standard play, but they are pretty hilarious, so I want to take a look at them anyway. When Wooser Investigating comes into play, you ask your opponent how many climax cards they have in their hand. After they answer, if you think they're lying to you, you can put the top card of your library in the clock and look for yourself. If it turns out your opponent was lying to you, you put this card in their level to automatically level them up. In a way, I almost wish this was a legal card. I think it'd be kind of funny to see how many people would try to lie to you in order to make you take the 1 damage for no reason. Wooser Go on a Trip is a level 1 cost 10,000. If your opponent by some ridiculous miracle finds a way to step over this card and this card becomes reversed, just go on a trip. Go to the store, go hang out with some friends. You could even do something as simple as going to the bathroom, it says on the card. If your opponent comes to find you, then you have to return back to the game immediately. If your opponent never comes to find you, then you have to return after a little while has passed. I guess a little while is kind of up to you and your opponent. Ah, thank God they printed that on the card. If they hadn't, I would have just went out forever. I think this card's hysterical, because it's kind of like, hey, if your opponent figures out a way to step over this card, then just go. Just go out somewhere. Do something. Socialize with someone. Buy something from the store. Ya friggin' nerd. Full-Spirited Wooser is a pretty fun card. When you take damage, if the damage is not cancelled by a climax, you can just ask your opponent if they'll let you cancel the damage anyway. It's really not much more complicated than that. You just beg your opponent to let you not take the damage, even though you're supposed to. In return for your kindness, you must give your opponent one shoulder massage at the end of the match. So, have you ever wondered how to beat Kudou in a match of Weiss Schwarz? Well, here's how. You play 4 of this card, and I will let you cancel the damage as many times as you want. You can beat me as many times as you like. Shoulder massages are awesome. Shopping Wooser allows you to buy 1 pack of Weiss Schwarz cards, any set you'd like. Select 1 character from that pack and put it on the field on any slot. It's like a comic book store owner's wet dream. As if that's not enough, the effect is indeed repeatable. Pay 4 stock, buy 2 booster packs, and get yourself a full field. Now, I'll be completely honest, I'd actually really like to see a tournament where people have 4 copies of these in each of their decks. It's definitely going to bankrupt some people, but wouldn't that be a fun tournament to watch? So for the low cost of just 14 stock, you yourself can have a Wooser White Day Present in play. White Day Present sports a very impressive 20,000 power, and the character opposite of it gets -1 soul. That not enough for you? Well, how about this? You discard 5 cards from your hand when this card comes into play, and your opponent pretty much loses the game. Your opponent must level up using this card. You know, it just hit me. That's what that 1 assist that lets you continuously get stock, and the other assist that lets you draw cards are for, pulling this off. That would be quite clever if any of these cards were legal. It's All a Dream Wooser is the ultimate middle finger to all competitive decks. If you don't already have an It's All a Dream Wooser in your memory, then what you do is you put this card in your memory when you hit level 4, which we all know is the level you normally lose on, and you restart the entire duel. This may sound like just an annoying way to stall, but this is a pretty good card. It swings for 2 soul, and when you restart the game, this card is in your memory, so you're playing on a 49 card deck, baby. Playing with 1 less card obviously puts you closer to your climaxes and 1 step ahead of your opponent. Personally, I think part of the effect text should be you have to wear a troll mask for the rest of the match. But, you know, I don't work for Bushy Road. Yet. And, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for Wooser. I'd really like to see Bushy Road come out with some more Trollsy promo cards like the ones in this set. But we'll just have to see what happens. If you enjoyed this analysis of the Wooser set, then it would really help me out if you left me a like. Have your own thoughts on the deck, or have an idea for what you want me to do next, then feel free to abuse the comment section below. And finally, subscribe to stay up to date on the latest Kudou news. Until next time, Weiss fans, I bid you adieu.